Alright, welcome to the next module in our Metasploit class. In this portion of the course, we'll be looking at ways to gather information about your target systems. That includes things like the operating system, IP addresses, ports they're listening on, some banner grabs to get service information, and so on. There are a lot of ways to do this from within Metasploit directly, and we can also integrate other tools to add extra detail. For instance, if you want to do a vulnerability scan, you'd probably want to use something like Nessus. If we are doing a simple port scan, we can use Nmap. So let's go to our back to our Metasploit instance. Now, since we ran that Postgres exploit before, we should expect to see some information in the database now. Since I made a connection to this system, the Metasploitable system, the database was automatically updated to show me that this system now exists. I can run the services command to see what services are known to my database. The only service so far is the Postgres service running on TCP 5432. And we know this service exists because that was how we established our Meterpreter shell. However, what I want to do is get rid of this host. I want to start with a clean slate so that I can do a scan and know that I've got exactly what I get. Well, I want to know that what I found in the scan is what's in the database. You can certainly mix and match adding things to your database by using different tools, but I just want to clean everything out for right now. Okay, so back to Nmap. Nmap allows, or you can run an Nmap scan directly from the command line. If I do an nmap-h, I can see all of my options within Metasploit. I got different scan types, list scan, ping scan, doing SYN scans, Christmas scan, null scans. I can control the speed of the scanning and so on. Generally, what I like to do as a first pass, this isn't the stealthiest scan available, but it certainly gives a lot of good information, is I like to do the -A option. Because this gives me a lot of good information about the target and gives me a clue as to what kind of services are running. It does a lot of banner grabs, and we'll let this go. This might take a few minutes to run. While that's running, we can talk about a couple of things. So Nmap, as we're seeing it here, will do the scan, but it doesn't actually add anything to the database. And you might think, well, what's the purpose of that then? Why wouldn't I want to keep it in the database? Well, there's two different options, right? I can run the scan on something just to see what its characteristics are, but I may not want to store that information. All right, so let's review the scan. That completed fairly quickly. All right, we can see that the host is up, of course. 977 closed ports, and then it tells me the ports that are open. So we're running an FTP server, VSFTP. We'll do some research and find out if that's vulnerable. There's an SSH server. I'm running on port 22. I've got Telnet on 23, SMTP, mail transport on port 25. A little bit of more information about the mail configuration. Also running DNS bind on port 53. I've got a web server running on port 80. Looks like Apache 228. So I'm getting some good information from my banner grabs here. I also have RPC bind running on port 111 with a whole bunch of good information about the RPC info and services that are running on this box. I'm also running some NetBIOS on 139 and 445. So any kind of Samba related vulnerability should also be explored. It looks like some kind of remote shell running on port 512. Maybe 513 has a remote shell running as well. We're not sure what those are yet, but we'll find out. some kind of Java registry on port 1099. I've got a Metasploitable root shell on 1524. That port's usually associated with Oracle databases, but it might be there for some other reason. NFS, I've got another FTP server running, ProFTP. MySQL, with some good information about the MySQL implementation. Postgres, which is the default credentials that we used to log in earlier. I could have shown the credentials command and seen that was in the database as well, but we'll review that again later. Looks like I have a VNC server running on port 5900. I've got X11 Windows. Looks like an Unreal server is running over IRC. So for Unreal gaming servers, one of those was apparently installed. So I'll have to check and see if this has any vulnerabilities. There's an Apache Java server running. I've also got another Apache instance running on port 8180 for Tomcat and Coyote. Then lastly, I get my MAC address, what the Linux kernel is, and even the distance over the network. It's one hop away. And finally, some NVT stat information like workgroup and NetBIOS name. So some great information, right? But as I run hosts, you'll see there's nothing in there. What I could do is I could change this to db_nmap. And this is available from the help screen, of course, if you go check. But db_nmap will now run the same scan again, but it'll pull all the data from the scan and populate the database with this. So we can poke around and see what that looks like here in just a moment. In the meantime, the other port scanners that are available within Metasploit are fairly numerous. We've got a lot of different choices there. So we see the output looks more or less the same as it did before. However, now if I run hosts, I see that I've got a host there. I can run the services command and see what services it discovered. These are all the open ports on that particular system. Services has some interesting features as well. You can add services to the list. You can delete them. We saw earlier how you can look at the given columns. I can also, maybe I only want to display services that are up, right? So a scan might return all the different ports with services that are expected to be there, but they're not running. So I can filter. But luckily, the Nmap scan just showed me those things that are up. So now I've got a nice concise list of things that I can go after to break into this system. I can try running the credentials command. The Postgres exploit, if I were to use that one again, would populate this particular area. In fact, let's do that. Let's do a search for Postgres. And if I remember correctly, it was Postgres payload. So we will use Postgres payload just to establish that the credentials function works as I've explained. Notice that my remote host is set automatically because I did that set G earlier, the global setting for remote host. You can globally set any of these parameters that you see. So we'll go ahead and do the exploit, sending my stage. And now I've got my interpreter shell. And I can prove that I'm on that system by running ifconfig. And there's the address, 129. And we've kind of reviewed some of this earlier. But the great thing is now I can go ahead and exit out of my interpreter shell. And I can even exit out of the context of the Postgres payload. Now if I look at my credentials, username and password were correct. Well, it should have populated the database with my credentials. For some reason that didn't work, but we know the connection worked.